Welcome to the Business for Breakfast seminar series presented by Huddleston Bowling. Business for Breakfast seminars provide very practical information for business people on topics ranging from sales and marketing to customer service, employee relations, technology, and accounting. For information about upcoming seminars, go to www.huddlestonbowling.com/events, or to view videos from past seminars, visit e4b-huddlestonbowling.com. Today's seminar is Say What? Communicating Effectively in a Multi-Generational Workplace. Our guest speaker is Emily Bennington, founder of Professional Studio 365. Co-sponsors for this seminar are Huddleston Bowling LLP, the Small Business Administration, and SCORE.
This presentation is Say What? Communicating Effectively in a Multi-Generational Workplace. And I want to start by saying that I have two favorite Arab sayings. One is, trust Allah but tie your camel. And the other is, people resemble their times more than they resemble their parents. When you think about multi-generations in the workplace, and what does that mean and why it's important, the theory is that if seminal important things happened in your formative years, which the formative years are between the ages of approximately 17 and 23, then your perception of the world has been shaped. And why does this matter? The reason why this matters is because there are right now 4 different generations in the workplace, which is more than has ever been in the workplace ever. And the first is traditionalists, those who were born before 1945. Those are the ones who will remember Pearl Harbor and have been incredibly affected by that. Boomers, 1946 to 1964, Gen X, 1965 to 1980, Gen Y and Millennials, 1980 to 2000. And then Boomers down there, you know who you are, hanging out at Woodstock. The reason why this is important is because when you think about a cohort, it's who you went through your formative years with. You watched the same TV shows. You have the same references. You went through the same experiences by and large. I mean, this is a broad brush that I'm painting with. But those perceptions shape the way that you look at the world. So I want to just very briefly go over what the different cohorts are. When we think about traditionalists, those who were born in 1945 and before, this is the generation that basically built the infrastructure of America, a post-war generation. They grew up in the wake of crippling economic depression, right, as we know, and definitely were heavily shaped by war. Can you imagine growing up in World War II and how that would affect the way that you look at the world now? Boomers, 1946, 1964. These are the ones who were raised under the collaborative influence of Dr. Spock. Dr. Spock was the first to influence parents to be collaborative with their children, to think about how the children thought, to teach children about team building and that sort of thing. Whereas before it was always my way or the highway, what I say goes. And Dr. Spock, the reason why he was so influential was because this was revolutionary at the time, to raise your children almost as participants in your family versus just their kids and we know what's right and what's wrong and we're going to tell them what to do. So I think because the boomers were raised that way, that's why when they reached their formative years, they fought for change and they were so vocal in what they wanted. But the neat thing about the boomers is even though they were vocal and fought for change and burned the bras and the draft cards and all that stuff, they still had the work ethic of their parents. And that's the reason why I think the boomers have been so influential. I mean, obviously apart from just sheer numbers, but so influential in changing the course of business. It's only when the boomers came up that business itself became more collaborative too, right? Learned from Dr. Spock, changed the course of business. You know, we see all these diversity programs in business now. Those were started by boomers, right? You guys are boomers. This is right? Okay. We live in a technologically advanced E-generation where Everybody communicates via email, text. If you have something to say to somebody, you text them, you email them. I actually heard somebody who was 25 the other day say that it was rude to pick up the phone and call. It's funny because I thought about that, and then I think about like what I do in my own life. When I call people, I say, gosh, I'm so sorry to bother you. That's a change. But what I love about Bob is that he has a line, a famous line at Dixon Hughes Goodman. Hey, do you have a minute? Bob will actually call you, and this is polite, thank you for doing this. Bob will call you and say, do you have a minute? He doesn't just kind of barge in on you. But if you have a minute, he will come down and talk to you face to face. And I think that in a world that is zigging towards e-communication, almost lightning speed too much, that zagging back to face-to-face communication is incredibly effective. And I think that one of the great things about just the boomer generation is that value of interpersonal skills. And so, Bob, this is one of the reasons why I heart you. And I think that when I talk to new grads now, when I train new grads, I always tell them not to rely so heavily on e-communication, because the interpersonal face-to-face communication is absolutely still where it's at. So Gen X, 1965 to 1980. Gen X, I'm a Gen Xer. They are definitely children of divorce. They're what we call latchkey kids, because they were forced to stay in the home and take care of themselves. Just lock the door, kids, and make yourself some dinner. That's pretty much the way Gen X was raised. And so because they had to thrive amid change, I mean, you think about like divorced parents, Gen X was constantly being bounced back and forth between mothers and fathers. They had to learn to thrive amid change. And as a result of that, they definitely crave structured work environments. Gen Y. Never, ever, never known a world without computers, never known a world without internet access. They are, as I'm sure you would all agree, incredibly tech savvy. They're incredibly smart. They're very socially concerned. And they inherited the boomer ideals of their parents. So the boomer, you can do anything, be anything that you want, they've got that. I think that a lot of people would say they got that, though, without that linchpin key that made the boomers so successful, which is that strong work ethic. So the way that the workforce shakes out today, this is a 30,000-foot overview of it. 5% of the workforce is traditionalists, born 1945 and before. 38% are the boomers, so boomers are definitely the majority, not the vast majority of the workforce anymore, but a majority. Gen X is 32%, and Gen Y is coming on strong at 25%. So Gen Y is a quarter of the workforce right now, and that number will only continue to grow. You need all of these different generations in the workforce. You need that, because it takes a broad range of perspectives to make very smart business decisions. The key is that we need to understand why people behave the way that they do, so that we can learn to react to them a little better, right? It goes back to what I said at the beginning of the presentation. The seminal events that happened in your formative years have transformed the way that people think about the world, and so we have to give people some credit and some leeway, some gray area for where they're coming from. If we all take the time to kind of back up and say, why is that person thinking this way? Why are they behaving this way? Then we may have a better chance of dealing with, we will have a better chance of dealing with them better. So the more that we can understand these types of why people have these behaviors, the more satisfied people will be in their workplace. What I think is important for you guys to take away from this is to have some type of organizational, generational diversity training within your organizations, because again, if people understand the backgrounds of others and why they communicate the way they do and why they have the thoughts and feelings the way they do, then understanding is the first key to successful relationships with them. What's wrong with kids today? Gen Y is impatient. right? We all know that. They've never had to use a card catalog. They've never had to look something up in the dictionary, right? They've never had to do any of that. Of course they're impatient. How did we learn patience? Gen Y wants success too fast. But look around. Look around at the success that they're seeing their peers have. The president of Facebook he was born in 1984. Right? So they're looking at their peers, and they're seeing their peers have all this success, and they want it for themselves too. So we should all really stop blaming Gen Y. We should all really stop putting the onus on them for the reason why they behave the way they do. In a lot of ways, we've created them to be this way. As parents, we've created them to be this way. We throw them princess parties when they're 5 years old, right? We throw them skating parties. Every party has a theme, right? We protect them from every little thing that could possibly go wrong. We're right there to swoop up and save them. When my son was climbing up the stairs, my dad was like recording it with his camera, and my husband was like, "Oh my God, he's gonna fall!" And my dad was like, "Let him fall. That's how you learn, right?" So we want to protect our kids from everything. We've all heard the helicopter parents, the parents that hover over their kids all the time. Now it's worse. They're cockpit parents. They're not only hovering over their kids, they're in the cockpit, like driving the helicopter for them. And I have a remote here because, again, my sons are 5 and 4 years old. I let them choose what we want to watch. When I grew up, it was, we're watching whatever my dad wanted to watch. I let them choose. They're participants in the family. So then they get in the workforce, and they expect to be participants in the workforce, and we're like, whoa, you haven't earned that yet. We're raising them to be this way, and then we're bashing them on the head because they act the way that we've raised them to be. Some real signs of trouble are, I just attended a presentation where a neuroscientist who's been studying this for years has found some very disturbing things. And the one is that years of e-communication has left digital natives unable to decipher face-to-face communications. They're losing the ability to do that. And when you think about what it means to succeed and to get things done in business, you need to be able to read people, right? Like, I can read you now. You're getting a little squirmy, like, like I can see that, right? They would miss it. They would miss it because they're not trained to do that. And you think about it, like, all they've been doing is looking at their phone. This is this is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. Second, growing up, Google has created a nation of people who know where to find the answer, but we're losing the people who are able to generate the answer, right? So we're getting a nation of searchers, but we're losing the idea generators. And that's going to be huge, not only now, but 20 years from now, as we try and maintain America's status as a global juggernaut in the world. So some best practices: study the composition of your own workplace, right? Offer some training so that people can understand where people are coming from. Find ways to capture the legacy knowledge, because traditionalists are obviously leaving the workforce. Boomers are leaving the workforce. So have some way to retain that knowledge, because Gen Y is not staying, right? They're kind of hopping along jobs, right? Last slide. Age is a thing of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. I don't think that's true, based on everything that I've just told you today, right? But I do think it's a healthy way to look at the world as we all age. But in the workforce, age does matter.